Welcome to this meeting of the Randwick Local Planning Panel. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the various lands
is now exiting.
We occupy for this meeting, the Aboriginal people, their spirits and ancestors. We pay our respects to elders past and present. The meeting today is to consider, there's an administrative matter for the panel that we'll deal with later, but it's primarily to deal with the determination of 4 development applications, and we will deal with them in the order shown in the agenda. Panel members for this meeting are myself, Lindsay Fletcher, as the independent chair, Cara Crayson and Jason Perica as the independent expert members, and community member Peter Rush. This meeting is being held by public teleconference due to the COVID-19 precautions. As the panel chair, I'm requesting that you be considerate and respectful of each other and remain on mute until I ask you to speak at the meeting. I also request that none of you interject while another person is speaking, otherwise I will have to request that you are no longer part of the meeting. The panel operates in terms of a code of conduct and operating guidelines, which have been modified to facilitate the effective functioning of this panel. The temporary changes are available on the Council's website.
+614314197929 is now joining.
This public meeting will be recorded and will be placed on Council's website following the meeting. If that is of concern to you on privacy grounds, then I suggest you take that into consideration in your decision to make a public statement before the panel today. In terms of the code, general declarations of interest have been provided before the meeting by all panel members, as well as a specific declaration of interest in relation to the matters being considered today. I can confirm that all declarations of interest have been received and that no panel members have declared any conflicts of interest on any matter. The signed declarations will be available to view through the Council's website. I also wish to advise that all members of the public addressing the panel today must declare, prior to commencing their address, any political contributions or donations made over the past 2 years exceeding $1,000 to any political party or candidate who contested the last ordinary election of the Council. Our usual practice is to allow each speaker 3 minutes to present, including speakers representing community groups, individuals and the applicant. If you have registered to speak, your address to the panel will be recorded and you will be given a warning 30 seconds before your time limit. I do have the discretion to allow extra time if appropriate. We will hear first from councillors, followed by members of the public, then the applicant. The panel has been provided with a copy of all of the submissions received in response to public exhibition of the various development applications. Therefore, there is no need for speakers to repeat the points made in those submissions. I ask that each speaker be heard in silence while they are addressing the panel and that courtesy and respect be observed throughout the meeting. There is to be no personal criticism directed at any speaker or council staff. Any such criticism would be contrary to the panel's code of conduct and will not be accepted. Panel members may ask questions of the speakers to clarify our understanding of what is being said. After hearing from all speakers, the panel will adjourn to debate the matters and make its determinations. If more information is required by the panel, the decision today may be to defer either for a further public meeting or to be dealt with electronically. The panel decision and recording will be made available on Council's website as soon as possible, usually the following day. And there is to be no recording of this meeting other than the official audio recording. The panel will now consider the first development application on the agenda today. That's DA 598 of 2019 for 18 Jenner Street, Little Bay. We have one speaker recorded, that's Pam Courtney, representing the applicant, and I gather a second speaker, Cassie Vicente, is available to answer questions should the panel have questions. So, Pam, can I ask you to make your presentation to the panel? And Frank, if you'd obviously unmute Pam. We seem to have Pam sideways. We can't hear her.
Pam, can you please unmute yourself?
Is that better?
That's better. We can hear you now, Pam, so please.
I'm sorry I'm sideways. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thank you. My name is Pam Courtney. I'm speaking on behalf of my mother, Roberta Courtney, in the DA to back at 18th Street this day. I'd like to thank all the officers and consultants who have looked at this DA and their qualified recommendation. My mother accepts your recommendation and conditions. She agrees to reduce the coping time of school so as to alleviate concerns for neighbours and have notified our
Pam, sorry, can I interrupt? I think we're all having difficulty with the audio. I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind perhaps switching off your video might help the signal, and we'll just hear from you if that's okay.
There's video on.
Yeah, so
Is that better?
I think so. Let's start again if you don't mind.
You want me to come closer? Is that better?
I think that's a bit better.
So do you want me to start from the beginning or?
Yes, please.
Sorry. Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Pam Courtney, and I'm speaking on behalf of my mother, Roberta Courtney, who is putting a DA to the pool in the backyard at 18 Jenner Street. I'd like to thank all the officers and consultants who have looked at the DA and their qualified recommendations. My mother accepts recommendations and conditions. She agrees to reduce the coping height of the pool so as to alleviate concerns of neighbours and have notified our builder just plans. I feel she's covered all the other concerns, including but not limited to the heritage impact, by engaging various consultants and submitting favourable reports to our Neighbours Association, Prince Henry Community Association and Council. In conclusion, again, my mother accepts the panel's recommendations and look forward to swimming in the pool this coming summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam, and by all means you can turn the video back on now if you wish. I gather from that you're happy with the conditions, yes, including the condition to lower the height of the pool is what I understood from your submission. So thank you for those comments. Do any panel members have any questions of Pam?
No, none from Jason.
I'm seeing no's all around.
Just the one from myself.
Yeah.
So the question I had was one of the submissions mentioned possible noise from the pool equipment, which is located. So the neighbour is located to the east of the proponent, and I think they asked the question: is there any possibility that pool equipment would be located closer to the garage area, which would place it further away from that neighbour?
We are happy to do that, so we don't have to submit another DA or to alleviate worries.
No, I believe it's addressed by a condition, so you would simply satisfy that condition.
Not a problem. We're happy to do it to the garage, which is the gate down there too. That's probably a better spot.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Do any panel members have any questions of council officers in relation to this item? If not, I thank you. We will move on to the other items, and as I indicated, we will adjourn later to deliberate, and you'll be advised of our determination. So thank you, Pam. The second item we have today is DA 653 of 2019 for 36 The Avenue, Randwick. I have two speakers listed for the matter, Councillor Kathy Nielsen and the applicant Michael Fullilove. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. And I understand the architect Luigi Rosselli is also available to answer questions. So I invite the first speaker, Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you very much, Chair and panel. My concern relates to the garage studio. Is the proposed studio addition above the garage contextually appropriate for the site? And if you look at page 45 of the business paper, contextual appropriateness is clearly illustrated in figure 1, the facades along the avenue. However, on the next page, page 46, the next two illustrations, figures 2 and 3, show an unfortunate failing of contextual appropriateness. In figure 2, the current garage of the subject site definitely spoils the harmony of the adjoining development to the north. And in figure 3, the adjoining development immediately to the south of the subject site clearly demonstrates how important materials are to a facade, especially when in a heritage context. On page 30 of the Heritage Impact Statement, there's a sentence in the last paragraph by John Altram, who says, and I quote, "The garage studio to the rear is in context with other such structures in the lane." This, I would respectfully contend, needs more definition, and that is why I request that in the conditions of consent, it is crucial that condition 4 remains and any other additional phrases are inserted to ensure that the garage studio makes a sympathetic contribution to the laneway and that its scale, design and finish remain consistent, respectful and contextually complements existing building forms in this locality.
Thank you, Councillor. I anticipate the applicant, or at least his architect, may wish to comment on that as well. So thank you for that. The next speaker we have is Michael Fullilove. I think that's the correct pronunciation. Michael, you're representing the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and panel members, for the opportunity to speak to you. I hope you can hear me, and let me also acknowledge the Aboriginal owners of the land. My apologies for dialing in from a laptop in my car, but I've been attending a funeral for one of my colleagues at the Lowy Institute, so please excuse me. By way of introduction, my wife Gillian and I are both historians by training. We've lived in Randwick for 20 years, and we love this old part of Randwick, with St Jude's, the Town Hall, the public school and Allison Park. And we bought 36 The Avenue because we love the history and character of the Avonmore terraces, and we knew it would be a lovely family home for our 3 sons. We are committed to conserving and protecting this house, and for example, since we bought it 2.5 years ago, we've spent a lot of time and money restoring the front rooms, engaging heritage painters and carpenters to strip the white paint off the beautiful Australian cedar doors and skirting boards and window frames, and commissioning a traditional stained glass maker to create some beautiful glass panels in the traditional style to replace unsympathetic modern glass that a previous owner had installed. The house needs updating to make it work for a large family, and we chose Luigi Rosselli because he's an award-winning architect who is well known for both design excellence, but also for his sympathy for heritage buildings. And we're very pleased that Luigi came up with such a beautiful design for these additions, one that is respectful of the building's history and which will also improve the aesthetic appeal and functionality of the residents. We think that such a fine building deserves very fine additions, and we're also grateful to our heritage consultant, John Altram, for his advice. As you will see, most of the changes are to parts of the building that have already been substantially altered, such as the kitchen. You'll note that we're preserving all the old fabric, the fireplaces and ceilings and so on, and indeed we're reversing some unsympathetic alterations like the 1980s windowless toilet that a previous owner had installed on the first floor landing. We're doing that to open it up to light, but also so that we can enjoy the original fabric, including the stained glass that was covered up by the toilet. We had 2 separate public notification processes, and we were pleased that throughout that whole period we received no objections or submissions. And we are delighted that both Heritage New South Wales and Randwick Council's Heritage Planner have recommended approval of almost all the elements of the DA, including the studio and garage. I would invite Luigi to refer to the councillor's concerns. I observed that the Heritage Planner said that the garage and studio is consistent in scale, form and character to the existing development along the rear laneway, would not dominate or detract from the setting, and would not be visible from the public domain. And of course, that's a private lane, a right-of-way rather than a public lane. So we've made all the efforts we can to fit in from all sides. So let me conclude by thanking you, Mr. Chairman, for your time. We'll do our very best to preserve and improve this beautiful old building, and we believe these additions will make this house even more beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. And timing was pretty close to the time, so thank you for that. I take up your suggestion and would invite your architect, Luigi Roselli, just to comment on the matter raised by Kathy Nielsen. I take it from Michael's comments, which came through very clearly, by the way, with video and sound, that the conditions as recommended are acceptable to the applicant.
Well, Luigi Rosselli, architect, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'll speak for the applicants. Yes, we are understanding that a lot of the conditions come from the Department of New South Wales Heritage and Environment and Heritage, and we cannot object to those because they are coming from superior level. But in any case, I think it's a very good report from an architect's point of view, because they find very little which are upsetting the council or the public. There was very little objections from the public about it. In relation to Councillor Nielsen, which we appreciate her interest for the heritage aspect of the lane, I invite, I don't know if the panel is driven by the lane, but let me describe the place. It is a succession of very similar buildings over the garages that are all pretty much in the same height, and our proposal is the same, is in between the height of the two buildings next door. So we're just averaging the heights, the wall height and the roof height are averaged. And particularly the one on the north side is much higher than the one on the south side. So we took an average. And the materials are the same that are existing at the base of the building, which is it's painted bricks, which is visible also onto the adjoining base of the adjoining garages and studio space. We have very moderate and small windows, which encourage the safety and the security aspect of the lane, and at the same time the proportions, which are very traditional. And they have mansard, the upper part of the window goes into the roof shape because the gutter line is very low. And we thought that, you should be able, standing up, to look up outside. And that aspect, in fact, it's creating a little bit of interest into the wind fenestration, while it's not an unusual detail, because you can find in some heritage items similar type of windows. The material of the roof is a metal roof, which is appropriate for the secondary building in that strip. So everything is done with proportion, with care of detailing, and nothing is flashy. And I think it's what this lane requires.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Panel members, any questions of either the applicant or his architect? Karen?
Yeah, I had a question. I just wanted to clarify your understanding of obviously there's a proposed condition referring to the Heritage New South Wales GTAs, and within that there are some internal works that they have not approved, which are referenced on page 49 of the report, being the ensuite at the second floor and the modification to the door of the proposed robe at the first floor. I note that in council's heritage officer has assessed those works and has not raised the same concerns with them, and had recommended a condition to do with tiling going over the existing fabric, but obviously that condition has not been transferred to these draft conditions because of the GTAs not approving those works. But I just wanted to get an understanding of what your understanding of that condition is to do with the ensuite at the second floor, because on your plans you've got a proposed ensuite on the first floor and you've got a proposed powder room on the second floor. Have you had any discussions with Heritage New South Wales? Is it your understanding that it's the powder room on the second floor or the ensuite on the first floor that they're not approving?
It is the ensuite on the powder room on the second floor that we had quite a long discussion with Heritage New South Wales, and they wanted some reassurance about the ensuite on the first floor, and they were satisfied with that, and they asked us to remove the ensuite on the second floor and or powder room, and we accepted that as a compromise, seeing that Heritage New South Wales had changed her original opinion about other things, so we accepted it basically. And so to me, unless I don't have a condition in front of me, it was very clearly discussed as the ensuite of the second floor.
Okay.
Or powder room of second floor.
Okay. And in terms of the other part of that condition with the modification to the door of the proposed robe at the first floor, so what is your intention then in relation to the design in that respect?
Well, look, the issue was only we were proposing to move it by 100 mil, and we found that it was possible to resolve the doorway, leaving it as it was,
okay,
and without any impact into the general design.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I just ask one question?
Yes.
Is it just because I've never been through a DA process before, and this has been quite a confusing one with the Heritage New South Wales as well as the council?
Yes.
It is the case, is it, that we can't really oppose the bathroom on the second floor at this point anyway because they've made a decision about it? Is that right?
Look, in essence, that's correct. At least you can't through this process. That is, we have no discretion.
Okay.
We must impose those conditions. The condition that's recommended is in essence that you comply with the general terms of approval.
Got it.
There is, I understand, a process for you to, if not appeal, but seek a review of the conditions they've imposed. And if that were to change, it probably isn't necessary to change your development consent because it's simply referring to those separate approvals.
Okay.
But you're right, we can't actually deal with that. But if you wanted to question it, and I understand there are avenues to do so, the appropriate people to deal with the department, the Heritage Office of the department at Parramatta.
Thank you very much. Well, I would just support what Luigi said, which is that we're prepared to live with that. And yes, Heritage New South Wales was fine with the ensuite on the first floor, And I think by leaving the door where it is, I believe they're also fine with that now too.
Yep.
Perfect.
Can I just jump in here, Chair? I guess you should know though that you do need to get a separate approval from the Heritage Officer. Confusing thing about doing an integrated approval, you think having been through this, that should be the end of it. So you still need to get a separate Section 60 approval from the Heritage Office. Yes. And there may be through that process some ability for you to negotiate with them the previous terms that they had for the plans that you get approved.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Thank you, Jason, for that.
Mr. Chair, could I just ask one other question? I don't want to try your patience, but just very quickly, I just didn't understand. Can you just clarify me in terms of Councillor Nielsen's questions? They were only relating to the part of the garage facing the lane. Is that right?
That was my understanding. It was about a concern that it was compatible when viewed from the laneway. I don't think I didn't interpret it to mean it was a concern when viewed from inside the property.
Fine, then I support everything Luigi said so well. Thank you.
All right. So thank you, everybody. Did panel members have any questions of council staff on this item at this stage?
No.
No, thank you. We should. I should mention that we've had the benefit of the briefing from the council staff prior to the meeting, and most, if not all of us, have in fact inspected the site, including the rear laneway. So we're familiar with the issues being discussed. So thank you for your time. We'll now move on to consider the next development application, which is DA 571 of 2019. It's for signage at 305 to 307 Anzac Parade, Kingsford. We have two registered speakers, Councillor Kathy Nielsen and followed by the applicant, Daniel Mann from Whitehall Property Services. So, Councillor Nielsen, can I ask you to talk to us on this item?
Yes, thank you, Chair and panel. The first comments are from Councillor Shuri, who apologises for the meeting today. Her points are that the original DA for this signage was refused by the Land and Environment Court. The only change is a green wall. Green walls are very expensive to maintain, as the installer of this wall will ascertain. The champion of green walls will confirm that the wall at 100 Central Broadway employs a person every day to maintain this wall. The cost of this is borne by strata owners. I am a huge supporter of green walls, but understand how expensive they are to maintain. But this is just a huge advertising sign that has been refused by the Land and Environment Court before. I do not support the arguments for community benefit. I urge you to adopt the recommendation by our council planners, Councillor Lindsay Shuri. And my major concerns are the signage on the southern elevation is unsuitable for the site as it encroaches onto the adjoining southern lot, which will hinder the amalgamation and redevelopment potential of the southern adjoining lots, or isolate the adjoining lot to the south at 307 Anzac Parade, and will be incompatible with the desired future character of the area. And the proposal is inconsistent with the draft environmental planning instrument being the K2K planning proposal. It is not the appropriate location for such a sign and accompanying green wall. An appropriate site would be a corner site which did not impact an adjoining building. I urge the panel to support the officer's recommendation for refusal of the application.
Thank you, Councillor. Do panel members have any questions of Councillor Nielsen? No? All right, thank you very much. Next speaker, indeed, I think our final speaker on this matter is Mr. Daniel Mann. Is Daniel there? Yes, you are.
Yes.
Daniel.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
We can. And Daniel, before you start, can I say your letter earlier this week has been circulated to all members. All of that correspondence, we're familiar with it. So by all means, you might wish to respond to what Councillor Nielsen has said, because part of that was covered in your letter and we're aware of that.
I understand.
But yeah, no need to repeat that, but we're keen to hear from you. So
Chair, Chairman, given the long history and detailed nature of this proposal, I wanted to seek permission from the chair up front to speak on 5 minutes today, please.
I'm happy to give you that.
Thank you. We have prepared a comprehensive and high quality application for a green wall and carefully integrated signage with the potential to revitalise Kingsford Centre through its significant public benefits. Today, I wanted to seek deferment of our application as we found several material errors in Council's assessment report that have flowed into reasons for recommending refusal. If any of these matters would cause the panel to consider refusing the application because of their significant nature, we seek deferral so that they can be clarified and corrected. Otherwise, our concern is that we would be denied a full and fair assessment of our application given the report in its current form. I have been responsible for preparing similar digital signage applications on behalf of Transport for New South Wales and Sydney Trains for over the last 6 years. Accordingly, because of my close involvement, I understand the legislation better than most people. With the legislation to guide the process, my experience in this field allows me to identify which sites are suitable for advertising and which are not. The suitability of this site for advertising is supported by the macro planning principles detailed in SEP 64 guidelines, and the proposal is compliant with all matters for consideration in SEP 64, as I believe the panel will find, including the appropriate placement of the sign, its size, as well as adopting conservative operational controls to protect residential amenity. Finally, it is important to point out for the panel some of the main differences between the original DA that was refused by the court and the current DA that is before the panel. Since the original DA, a lot has changed in relation to the K2K strategy. Importantly, Justice Payne respectfully had to err on the side of caution as the 2016 strategy document on hand at the time was an early draft and lacked any details on which sites would benefit from significant and material rezonings. Accordingly, Her Honour was cautious about approving the proposal in case the sites to the south were important components for the attainment of Council's vision. Since then, the strategy has been endorsed by Council and lists the key opportunity sites, and importantly, excludes those to the immediate south. It is the view of our expert that those adjoining sites will remain underdeveloped for the next decade. Joint consensus was reached between the lighting experts at the Section 34 conference, concluding that the sign would not cause unacceptable impact if dimmed to an average luminance of 205 candelas per metre squared at night. In addition to this, we agreed to a condition of consent to turn off the sign at 10 p.m. every night. Since then, a supplementary light impact assessment report was commissioned, concluding that the sign's operation would still comply with the SEP 64 guidelines and the relevant Australian standards if the maximum development potential in the planning proposal was achieved on all relevant site boundaries in the vicinity, irrespective of the FSR limitations. Ryan Shamier from Electrolight, who has completed more than 400 lighting impact assessments for digital signs, is able to talk through his findings with the panel following my speech. Since the previous determination, the light rail commenced operation along Anzac Parade and runs until 1 a.m. every night. This further demonstrates that the function of Anzac Parade as a transport corridor has intensified. Also, the public benefits in this DA have significantly increased by more than $500,000, and these benefits have received endorsement from the Kingsford Chamber of Commerce, as well as the councillors at the June Council meeting, satisfying Clause 13 of SEP 64. In conclusion, our primary concern today is that if the panel members are not satisfied that all of the errors in the report have been sufficiently clarified, then the assessment of this DA should be deferred. Given the importance of the revitalisation of the town centre, the do-nothing option of a refusal would leave the large blank wall as a central eyesore and forgo the significant public benefits which would be detrimental to the overall strategy and local businesses. On the other hand, approval of the proposal and the transformation of this site that would be achieved together with the related VPA would contribute to Council's vision of transforming Anzac Parade into a green boulevard. We welcome any questions from the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Panel members, any questions at this stage? I'm seeing no's. Peter?
Yes, just had some questions just in regards to the green wall.
Sure.
So I'm just interested in the proposed maintenance for the green wall, because I'm aware that it can be quite, sort of high demand on maintenance. So interested whether the maintenance will be determined by a set frequency or by monitoring the need to replenish plants that are underperforming or dying.
Thank you, Peter Ryan. In response to that, we submitted a planting strategy with the DA, which was in a form of a plan of maintenance and plan of management. In that, it detailed a schedule of all the different types of inspections that will be conducted by Jungle Fire themselves. And that would be the document that's in front of us today. That has all been factored in with a warranty from Jungle Fire in relation to the performance of the landscaping. So as part of the engagement with Jungle Fire, they are responsible for the upkeep and maintenance in accordance with this schedule for the duration of consent.
Okay. And I just had a follow-up question. I noticed that some of the, there's a mixture of about 50% native plants and 50% non-native plants. Was there any concern that some of those non-native species, if they go to seed, that they may be dispersed by birds and then cause problems for native bush areas? Is there any, was that addressed? I didn't see that anywhere.
So Jungle Fire have looked at this site in regards to the microclimate based on its south-facing element as well as its position at height. In regards to a species cross-contamination, that's been factored in. Jungle Fire are the experts in green walls. They've had many projects completed with governments and councils as well as private projects. And if that's a concern we can condition the DA in regards to specific plants that aren't recommended, and we can make sure that they're excluded from the planting strategy. However, the planting strategy was very detailed, which was provided in a different report to an appendix to the DA. And I'm pretty certain it included the reasons and justification why those plants were appropriate for the site.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions from panel members? Cara?
I understand from reading through the documentation and the officer's report that the planting and the digital signage are integrated, and there's a comment in the assessment report that because of, I guess, the cost of the green wall and the associated maintenance that that one relies on the other. But I just wanted to check that with you in terms of, obviously at the moment we have a report before us recommending refusal. Do you have any interest if there was a refusal for the signage? Is there any interest in pursuing the green wall without the signage, or are they definitely linked?
Unfortunately, and as the councillor pointed out, the maintenance of the green wall is a considerable expense, and the revenue from the sign goes towards maintaining it throughout the condition of consent. And without the sign, unfortunately, the proposal is not viable.
Okay, thank you.
And I take it, just to address the concern raised by Councillor Nielsen, that the costs of maintenance will be borne by the by Whitehall or by the applicant, certainly not by the boarders in the boarding house.
And if the panel wanted to go further and require the applicant to put a bond in place to cover the ongoing maintenance on an annual basis, the applicant would accept that.
Okay. Just to clarify it further, I understand what you've said earlier, comparing this with the decision of the court on the previous application, that obviously circumstances around there have changed, planning controls and the nature of the town, and the K2K plan has advanced further, clarifying some matters. But I take it as I understand it, the sign itself is essentially the same size and location as the previous sign. It's the green wall that is a new element, together with the other changes to the proposal put to the council.
The sign has not changed because it was and still is compliant with SEP 64. So it was a comment that was made by Justice Payne that said that the blank wall is unsightly, and by putting a sign on the blank wall, it would draw people's attention further to the blank wall. That triggered us going down the path of putting the green wall there to satisfy her.
Dealing with the rest of the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I noted your comment that you have your lighting expert available to answer questions should it be necessary. So again, panel members, did you have any questions of the lighting expert? I don't know if that's a key issue. So, all right. Any questions of council officers in relation to this item? Again, we've had the benefit of a briefing and a written response to your submission as well. So we'll take that on board. Thank you, Daniel, for your presentation. We will adjourn shortly, or in fact, conclude the meeting and meet separately to deliberate on all of the matters before us. The only other development application on our agenda today is DA for 8 Day Avenue, Kensington. There's no people registered to speak on that item that I'm aware of. Mr. Coe, that's correct as you understand it?
Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Yeah. So that being the case, I think we can conclude the meeting. We've now heard from all of the registered speakers, and in accordance with the panel guidelines, the public meeting will now be closed, and the panel will move to a closed meeting to deliberate and vote on each of the matters. The outcomes from voting and determination will be made available through Council's website, usually either late tonight or tomorrow. A recording of the public meeting will also be available through the Council's website. Can I thank, on behalf of the panel, can I thank all speakers and the Council staff for their assistance, and I declare the meeting closed at 1:48 p.m. Thank you.